We got a new form of Varina way sooner than expected. So we need to talk about it.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got a couple of new cards for you guys because this week we've got a lot of new cards revealed to us, but more importantly, the new cards for Dragon Empire are extra spicy. But before we get into those cards, let's first take a look at the other cards from the other nations before we're gonna start and delve into the intricate parts of the new Dragon Empire cards themselves. So let's start off with the second to best nation, that's of course Dark States, as they got some new cards including a brand new Gear Chronicle unit, which is this grade 1 Steam Artist Pitana, or Pifana. And Pitana has the ability, act on Record Circle, cost, put this unit into your soul, choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 2k until the end of turn. So this is basically very similar to the other Gear Chronicle grade 1 that once it plays you can give another unit in the same column plus 2k power, but that unit could give a unit plus 5k if you're in Final Rush, so this is a bit more flexible. The only upside to this card is that you can place immediately on the field to be more aggressive in the early game, and then during the turns it matters, you can put it into the soul to give more power to the field. Now overall, this is mainly just pack filler, as I don't really see a lot of use for it, as it just have 2k power buff. So yeah, it's just there. The artwork is neat, but sadly probably not that playable. Now we also got a second card for Dark States, which is this grade 2 Soulful Wild Master Megan. And Megan has the ability continues a Record Circle. If you soul charge this turn, this unit gets power plus 2k. So this is probably gonna active every single turn. Now the plus 2k isn't all that great because it basically becomes a 12k attacker, so it doesn't hit a grade 3 number. But it can be useful for early aggression because she plus an 8k booster makes a 20k column, and a 20k column is a magic number against a grade 2 10k body. So there might be use for it to some extent, but not that versatile, especially if the games go a bit longer. And as seen as Dark States looks to be a very long, prolonged game plan with the whole Final Rush mechanic. I'm not too much fan of this card, but the artwork is pretty damn good, which is also a shame. Now if we go over to the next clan, we enter Keter Sanctuary and we get two cards which are pretty damn good for whatever archetype you might play for Keter Sanctuary, as we've got this grade 1 Divine Sister Tartine, and Tartine has the ability auto, when this unit is placed on the Record Circle, cost soul plus 1 and rest this unit. Look the two cards on the top of your deck, choose a card from among them, put it on the top of your deck, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck. So this is somewhat similar to the grade 2 of the right line of the new secondary archetype that revolves around drive checking triggers, but this one can check the top 2 instead of only the top 1 card, which is very good for not only that archetype, but also, you guessed it, Bastion. So this could be another grade 2 option for Bastion to secure those grade 3 drive checks that you also rely on the mid to late game. So another very good staple card for whatever archetype you might use for Keter Sanctuary. But on top of that, we also have a grade 2 Divine Sister, which is Divine Sister Pastelito. And Pastelito has the ability auto Record Circle once a turn. When your drive check reveals a trigger unit, costs soul plus 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. This is very generic, it's basically a bit more power buff, it can be a 15k attacker, it's a bit RNG reliant, but with the top deck manipulation you have, it's pretty consistent in overall game wise, so it could be a very good 15k attacker that can make a solid 23k column with an 8k booster. So it's overall a nice card to up your power pressure on your rearguard columns in a general game plan. Now, with Keter Sanctuary out of the way, we've got 3 new cards for Stoicheia. And for Stoicheia, we begin with the new grade 1, which is this grade 1, Collusion Mutant Admentis. And Admentis has the ability auto, when this unit is placed on a rearguard circle, choose one of your other rearguards, and it gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So this is a free 5k power. It's pretty useful in whatever archetype you might play. It can buff a column, or it can help you with the multi-tech from the back row, where you can just give another unit an extra 5k power buff, thus allowing it to potentially hit over defensive trigger together with the extra 5k you get from your grade 3 from the starter deck itself, which is pretty nice. So it can be useful, but it all depends on the playstyle and what direction your deck is going to do. The main upset about this card is that it's free. there's no cost attached to it, means it can easily be splashed in whatever archetype or playstyle you might use, as long as it doesn't be power creeped out by other cards that are a bit more useful, either a bit bigger power or just more utility options themselves. So we have to wait and see if this is gonna see some use, but overall I'm enjoying the card. I'm liking it for what it is. Now if we go up the grade, we see a new grade 2, which is Spurring Maiden Elenia. And Elenia has the ability, although when this unit is placed on a Rigor Circle from hand, cost counter +1 and soul +1, choose a grade 2 or less card from your drop, call to the Rigor Circle, and it gets power +5k until the end of turn. Now this is actually a really good card because it somewhat has the same skill as another card for Stoicheia that can, I believe, check the top card and call it. But this just is more consistent because it gets whatever card that's in your drop zone immediately get to the field. So you exactly know what you're going to get, so you're not whiffing on potentially a trigger, or you get an order card so it gets to your hand as you actually want to have cards on the field to be more aggressive. So overall I see this as a much better card than we already got. It makes sense that there's a double R instead of just a rare or common or a card from the starter deck. And overall, I'm liking the direction what it is. And the extra 5k power is a nice bonus on top of it, because if you then factor in the multi-attack capabilities from the back row, you immediately make sure that they will also hit. And in some cases, maybe even over a defensive trigger. Combine this with the grade 2 that already gets another 10k power and another 5k power from Magnolia. And you're looking at quite a beefy boy that's attacking from the back row. But that's not all that we've got for Stoicheia, because Stoicheia got another very interesting card that you might have heard, because they got a brand new grade 2 Blitz Order, and that is Sealed Road. And Sealed Road has the ability, play this with cost counter +2, choose one of your opponent's Vanguard, and that unit gets critical -1 until the end of that battle. Now this is a very interesting card, because for 2 counterblast you can effectively negate an entire attack as long as they don't drive the critical trigger. Which is actually pretty decent, because depending on what deck you're facing, they might only run 8 crits, or maybe even less, and depending on how many crits you've already seen, there is even less chance that you actually hit something. And in this case, hitting an over trigger in most scenarios won't even matter all that much, because the attack is still 0 critical. Now, we all aware of the over trigger for Dark States that gives you the extra critical, so that over trigger substitutes as a critical trigger, so it can still work. But in the overall guarding potential, this is actually a very potentially powerful card, because for 2 counterblasts, you can effectively negate an entire attack. Now, is that worth it? It all depends on your scenario and how much guards it could potentially save, because if it's an 80k attack, I think 2 counterblasts is worth it to guard that attack. And it's somewhat similar to the Brandt cards that we've got for Link Joker back in the V era, which changes the trigger effect. So in that case, if your opponent hits a critical trigger, it basically makes the attack here at 0. But in this case, they need to hit a critical trigger to even make the attack worth something. So in a lot of cases, this is just counter +2, discard a card, and you're protected against the Vanguard attack in most cases from right now. But the moment we are going to see multiple criticals come into play, and maybe cards that can easily generate critical triggers at the top of your deck during attacks, yeah, then this card will be negated to some extent, but it's what it is, it's not the case. So overall, I'm liking this design as what we have right here. Hopefully we're going to see more cards like this, maybe with a bit more cheaper cost, but it's fine for what it is right now. Now, with that card from Stoicheia out of the way, let's go over to the other side of the waifu war factions as we enter Brandt Gate. And for Brandt Gate, we've got a new grade 2, which is probably a disciple or a descendant of Fighting Fist Dragon, Godhand Dragon, because we got Fighting Dragon, Gordog Dragon. I think that's how you pronounce Gordog, but its skill is, although when this card is discarded from your hand during your turn, if a set order is in your order zone, cost counter +1 and call this card to the Rigor Circle. So basically, if you have a prison card or a world card, or maybe even whatever future other set order we're going to get for Brandt Gate, or maybe other nation, but this is a Brandt Gate card, so there's no point in talking about that, it can work. Now, the only issue that I have with this card is that there's only 2 specific instances where this card can activate at the current stage. Because the only way to discard a card is with the right deck for Brandt Gate. We have no discard effects currently in Brandt Gate, so the only situation where you can use this card is the moment that your opponent dealt you damage. So that means your opponent at least needs to have one turn where they could attack. So effectively that means that it can only activate if we're riding up to grade 2 and we've got a damage, or when we're riding up to our grade 3. After that point, this card does absolutely nothing and it just becomes a vanilla card with no skills on top of it. But again, what I just described with this instance where you can use it, you also need to have a set order placed. So if you play the new deck that uses the World Orders, you might not even use this, you might not even be able to use this on your grade 2 right turn, because you need to be grade 2 to even use these set orders. So you have only one turn where you can use this card, and that's when you ride up to your grade 3. The prison deck can actually use this card when riding up to grade 2, because you can place the prison order card on your turn 1 play. So the card is sadly very limited. It's an interesting design, but as long as we don't see other discard effects, this card will probably not see play. And it's just pack filler. Now, another Brandt Gate card that probably will see play to some extent is their new double R grade 1 super speed robo Chelfel Stud, I think. Chelfel Stud. And Chelfel Stud has the ability act on rearguard circle once a turn, cost counter +1 and soul +1. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards and imprison it in your prison. Then if 3 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you draw a card. This is actually really great because this gives Brandt Gate another way to keep imprisoning your opponent's units without needing to rely on place effects or on hit effects, which is really nice. Now this in combination with your grade 3 means that you can always activate the full effect with drawing the card, because you can count +1, imprison 2, and then use this effect to imprison the third one and immediately draw a card. And it's much better than the grade 1 from the right line that just has the on-place effect to pay a counterblast and soul blast to draw a card if you imprison something initially. This is just do the same cost, but it's on an act ability, and you imprison one on top of that, which is way better. And that's pretty nice because it makes this card playable, and the artwork is pretty sweet. So at the very least, this artwork won't go to waste, at least at the very least for this set. Maybe it gets replaced with the next set. Who knows? We don't know what the power level is going to be once the next support wave rolls around. But so far, I'm liking this card. Now, with that said, we go back to Dragon Empire, and this is the main nation that we're focusing on for this video, because the reveals for this nation are quite surprising and very unexpected. And I'm actually very excited for these reveals because it makes the deck look a lot more fun, but more importantly, a lot more playable. Because we have this grade 3, which is Stealth Dragon Hado Shugen. And Hado Shugen has the ability, although when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, if you have a unit in the overdressed state, cost counter +1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So effectively, you need to have a Varina or the new Varina on top of Trickster in overdress to even use this effect. Now, on place to pop something for a counterblast isn't the greatest skill, and it also has this condition attached to it, but let's be fair, if you're playing Dragon Empire correctly, you should have at least an overdressed unit onto the field at all stages, because if you don't, you're probably not winning this match. So that is not the main issue. The main issue is that it's a grade 3 with an on-place effect. Now granted, it's the cheapest retire we've got so far, because most other retires cost maybe 2 soul, or a counterblast and a soul blast, or maybe 2 counterblasts, or in the case of the order card that can nuke the entire board, it's still at the very least a counterblast and a discard to retire something. This is just counterblast to retire something. Now, the other issue that I have with this card, even though it's the cheapest retire effect, it's not a grade 3. We ideally want our front rows to be filled with our Varina units that are attacking, because they gain the most value of our main grade 3 Nirvana that empowers the front row at that stage. So we have no reason to play other grade 2 or grade 3 attackers, because we're not using them as attackers if we could use our Varinas. So I don't really like this card all too much. It's basically just a utility options to retire something, but I don't think it's good enough for that. Maybe it's for budget players that want to have a bit more cheaper deck and might not be able to get their hands on all the new forms of Arena. This might see play at that extent, but for me, I'm not so much fan of this card. But a card that I am absolutely fan of is a brand new Varina card, because we've got Varina Arcus. And I was not expecting this card to be revealed in this set. I was expecting only one new Varina overdress card, and that was the cover card of the set. But apparently we're going to get 2 new forms in this set, and who knows, maybe even a third. We don't know, it can happen, but I am very, very happy with this card, because its effect is, of course, overdressed Trickstar, so it's just like the original Varina, we need to overdress on top of Trickstar, but its unique effect is auto. When this unit is placed on the record circle, if it's in the overdressed state, cost, counter plus 1, draw 2 cards, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. This is the cheapest draw effect we have seen as of yet. And to some extent, it's one of the cheapest draw effects we have seen for a long while, because counter plus 1 to just draw 2 cards, usually it's just 1 card per counter plus. It is pretty strong, and that from a set 1 is kind of ridiculous. But on top of that, we also get a free 5k power. That's pretty good. But what's important is that this skill is actually very much needed for Dragon Empire, because this whole overdress mechanic forces us to waste a lot of resource to even get our engine going. So we need these type of draw effects or resource enablers to let us keep going turn after turn after turn, even though our opponent might disrupt our plays by removing our overdressed units from the field, which is the cheapest form of removal for them, because they get a 2-for-1er, because we lose 2 cards in the process where they would actually only force us to lose 1 card. So being able to allow us to draw 2 cards immediately for 1 counterblast allows us to keep our resources flowing as we start to overdress turn after turn, and at the same time it allows us to pay the cost for Nirvana to keep resurrecting our Trickstar onto the field, so we have this overdressed target. Now, the important thing here to note is that this card and every other subsequent new form of Varina doesn't work with the right line of the starter deck for Dragon Empire, as well as it doesn't work with the order card that allows you to resurrect the Varina from the drop zone into your hand, because those cards, the right deck and that order card, specifically state for a Varina unit, not a unit with Varina in its card name. So it can only work with the original Varina. So that means we will always, at least for now, rely on the starter deck Varina. Maybe we're gonna run 1 to 2 copies, because it allows us to 100% get us at least 1 overdressed target into our hand so we can play that. But all these other Varina cards, we need to hard draw into them, so we're probably gonna run a lot of copies of this card, and probably upcoming new, we think, grade 3 Varina, but who knows, it could also just be a grade 2. We're probably gonna run those as 3 to 4 copies, as we need to hard draw into them. But luckily, thanks to this effect, if we be able to get this card into our hand, we can start drawing fast through our decks and dig to our other overdressed targets and actually start to let our engine go through. And at the same time, this opens up more playability and choices, because now we can either go for a draw engine with this card if we want to overdress him in the early game to dig faster through our deck, or we can be more aggressive and go for the starter deck Varina and just go with high beat power that consistently hit for hard, and potentially have some retire effect to boot on top of that if we want to get rid of some pesky units. So I am actually really liking this. Art is amazing, skill is amazing, and now I'm even more excited for the new Varina that's going to come in the triple R slot. So fingers crossed for a very interesting and potentially powerful effect. But if that wasn't enough, we've got yet another Dragon Empire card that is pretty damn good in my eyes, because Stoicheia isn't the only nation that's going to get Blitz Orders. Dragon Empire got its very own Blitz Order in the form of Burn Bright Pure Prayers. And this Blitz Order, grade 2, has the effect: if your damage zone has 3 or more cards, choose one of your units and it's get power plus 15k until the end of that battle. So this is effectively yet another trigger unit in your hand, and most importantly a critical heal or front trigger, because they have 15k shield. And yes, you might think to yourself, well, you need to have 3 or more damage, but let's be real, especially now, you will have free damage for most of the game. You will get over the threshold very easily, because multi-crit strategies aren't really a thing right now. We don't have a scenario where opponents can suddenly kill us from 1 to 6. That doesn't happen all that often, and if they do that, in the process they will damage us for 1 damage, 2 damage, and then again a 1 or 2 damage. So we at least have a guard step where we are above the 3rd damage, thus allowing us to use this effect. So it is actually pretty good. It's a solid 15k shield that we have guaranteed access to and isn't disruptible like the Stoicheia one, which forces you to have a back row filled with units, which means you need to sink more resources in it to actually use the order, and on top of that your opponent can shut down the order by just removing one of the units and suddenly it loses 10k shield. But on top of that, this actually plays very much into the playstyle of the overdressed deck, because as I just stated with the grade 3, we don't want grade 2 and grade 3 attackers, because at the end of the day we're going to rely on the Varina units that get way more bang for a buck. So running other attackers or grade 3s doesn't really make sense. So we can fill in the spaces with tech choices or other very useful defensive tools. And this grade 2 might be one of those cards. So I won't be surprised if this is going to be a staple to the overdressed deck, at least in the first set, as if we're not gonna get other insanely strong grade 2s or grade 1s that might surpass this potential. So we have to wait and see how far this card is going to go, but as it is right now, I'm liking this Blitz Order very much. And with that said, that were all the new cards that were revealed this week for the Card of the Day reveals, and I am quite surprised with some of the reveals, but Dragon Empire is the most pleasant one, because I wasn't expecting that new Varina to come out so soon, because I just thought that the box art unit for every single set is the only new form we're going to get for Varina. But with this double R Varina now revealed, we might see 2 forms per set, maybe even more. Will there be a common version, a rare version of a Varina? We don't know. Everything is now wide open because of this reveal. So I'm very curious and very excited for future reveals, as I'm probably gonna main Dragon Empire to some extent, maybe Dark States as well, because yeah, we all seen the episodes, we all want to play that deck now. But to be fair, Gear Chronicle is a very important aspect of that deck, so there's another reason for me. But that's enough me talking about all that stuff. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new reveals. Are there some other cards that I talked about that spiked your interest? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap. See you guys in the next one!